If you're a potter, you've most likely heard about the Great Pottery Throwdown. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is a competition show hosted in the UK. They bring in a bunch of amateur potters, like intermediate level potters, and they compete for the title of the greatest potter. I just think the show is really fun. Here's the deal though. They do not take international applicants. I've checked, and I'm really bummed about that. So I decided for this video, the very first show of a new season premiered last night, and I'm going to do the challenge. Let me first lay out the challenge that they had. The idea was to make a birthday tea set.
A birthday tea set.
So we need to build a cake stand, a cake slicer, a cream pot with a lid, a plate, and 2 teacups and saucers. So it's like you're having a little birthday tea ceremony. We're going to be building it in white stoneware, and they actually fired it and then used underglazes to give it color and then put it in a transparent glaze. If you're hearing something in my voice, I literally just recovered from COVID. This is the first day I've been back in my studio. Yay. But I am a little like short of breath, and we'll see how this goes. I mean, they do it in a weekend, which is absurd. I'm going to do it in like 5 days. So that's definitely going to be interesting. That's going to be an interesting challenge. And also my concept is something that I've never done before. So I decided to base this whole set on my garden that I grew last summer. I'm going to make a tomato cream pot plates that are going to be my Brussels sprouts. So the thing is that I don't actually have the Brussels sprout leaves anymore. So I actually found these leaves outside. I kind of took them from a farm field because I thought, okay, these look pretty similar, and I think I can basically I can pretend that they're the Brussels sprouts. I need to make a cake stand. I wanted to introduce some yellow. So far we have red and green. It's just looking a little Christmassy. So I wanted to add some joy in the yellow. What do I have in my garden that was yellow? And pretty much the only thing was the flowers of my tomatillos. So I'm going to put the flowers on the outside. I grabbed these from my garden. They are giant sunflower leaves. They can, you know, create that same effect if I push them into the clay. The cake slicer is going to be a jalapeno. And then strawberries. So strawberries on my plate. I am going to follow their timeline. Here's the deal. They have a drying room there.
I have opened the drying room.
I do not have the luxury of a drying room, so I'm actually going to split the 6 hours over the course of 2 days. So I am making that one alteration, but in reality, it's not going to have a big impact in the challenge itself. I'm gonna do 6 hours, and then whatever I don't use today will roll over to tomorrow. So we're gonna start with the cake stand because that's the part that scares me the most. I'm using Karl stoneware clay. This is 9ZF. If you are not based in Germany, I recommend you choose a local clay. I feel like we need to go with like 1,200 or something. Okay, it's 1,300, so we're gonna do that. 1,300.
And your time starts now. Good. It's
just size.
It is, isn't it?
So I'm going to use a bat for the cake stand because the cake stand, I believe, needs to be thrown upside down. I think I basically have to split this clay into 2 and bring half of it up and half of it out. So I'm going to just push in from the side. I actually don't mind that, but I am concerned that it's too thin. I don't think it's too thin, but it might be too thin. Let me check out our cake stand. Next, I'm making the tomato cream pot. It's going to be a very simple style of jar with no gallery, just a flange on the lid. The lip that I'm throwing up in the center is the flange that will be inserted into the jar. The rest will be sculpted into tomato leaves. So this one did end up wonky, but it's okay because I'm gonna be cutting those into leaves. So I'm not gonna bother waste time with redoing it because it's fine. So the idea is that these just slot into together, and then these parts are going to be kind of sculpted into leaves. So we have our creamer. What's next? Next, I'm throwing the sunflower cups. The trick for these is to make them identical. So I'm using my ruler and paying attention to how many pulls that I use and what type of pulls. Are they clay moving pulls or are they shaping pulls? Break it down into parts and notice each tiny shape, like the subtle flare at the top. When making the second cup, try to match those features as best you can. I'm quite happy with them. They're not exactly the same, but once I add the details to them, you're not gonna be able to tell. So here we are with the time, about a half an hour down. That may seem like very little, but that was kind of the fast part, is the throwing. Throwing doesn't really take that long. It's all the other stuff that takes a long time, especially with this project because there's going to be a lot of little parts. We're going to move over into hand building now. And in order to have these pieces ready by tomorrow, I'm going to put all of the thrown pieces in front of a fan now so they can dry out a little bit. And by the time I'm done hand building, I should be able to flip them over so that the bottoms can dry out overnight, and then I'll be able to trim them. Because if I leave them like this until tomorrow, the tops will be dry, but the bottoms will not be. And softly roll. Now I'm going to cut it out with my needle tool. Okay, so I'm going to use some newspaper. Just lay it over your slab. Grab a board. Flip it. Might stick to your board a little bit. It's all right. Just peel it off. And then we're gonna take our plate and wrap it in some cloth. Okay, and I'm gonna pull my cloth kind of tight around because I don't want any wrinkles or folds. Right? It's just like that. Put the plate on the bowl. Flip it over. And if you need to, you can kind of adjust where it's sitting by pulling on the fabric. And now you just repeat for the second one. If you get a bubble, that's fine. I get them too. Just pop them. So for this last one, this is the larger one. It should be about like a lunch plate size. I was looking for a larger leaf, but this is the biggest one that I could find. And so I think I'm gonna try and like fake that this is a larger leaf by using a second leaf and arranging it around. This might turn out awful. And then I'm thinking just like this. And maybe it'll look real. That doesn't look that bad. I think it's gonna be okay. I think it's gonna work. So if you're gonna make something like this, if you have any like organic matter, I'm not gonna bother, as long as it's not a large amount, I'm not gonna bother even trying to take that out before I put it in the kiln because it's just gonna burn off in the kiln. I don't wanna mess it up. 445. I have no idea if this is good or bad, but I still have to make my cake slicer today. So I still need to make my cake slicer today. I'm gonna flip my pots when they're done drying, and everything else is gonna happen tomorrow. So I have to say, the idea of making a cake slicer out of ceramic feels kind of like a gimmick to me. Why would you make a cake slicer out of ceramic? It's not gonna be thin. I'm just saying, like, you should use the best material for the project. They want me to make the cake slicer, so I'm gonna make the dang cake slicer. This is 1 centimeter, and now I'm going to make a stencil. If you watch a lot of my videos, you may notice that sometimes I let my slabs dry before cutting them out, and sometimes I do not. And the only difference between when I do either is when I am going to shape it after cutting it. So in this case, I need to shape it still, so I'm not letting it dry out. So I need to find something to lift this guy up. Potter's Bible, great book. This is literally the best I could find piece of wood. I'll slide it under here. Now I'm gonna let this dry before I finish it up. So we have 4.5 hours left. I wish that the show didn't rush them. I don't know, I don't see the point of it. Personally, as a viewer, I would like to see the potters make the best things that they could possibly make. But I do think that it is asking a hell of a lot to have people produce the best work they can possibly do in such a foreign setting. I'm already feeling quite challenged here because I'm making a bunch of stuff that I've never made before, but I guess it's supposed to be demonstrating your skills under pressure. So that challenge is already there. And then on top of that, they're putting them in a new environment. I'm sure it's really noisy in there. Everyone's running around doing things, and then the camera people, the added pressure of knowing that this is going to be on national TV. No wonder they're like crying in the show, especially when things go well, because you have such a relief. I don't know, I just want to say mad props for the potters who work on the show. Anyway, we are going to let these dry, and then tomorrow I will be back in and do the decorations. Later in the evening, I came back to flip them. I needed to change the bat that the cake stand was thrown on. It wasn't strong enough to hold itself up yet, but the top wouldn't dry on the plastic bat. So I carefully transferred it to a wooden bat lined with newspaper. I probably should have waited a tiny bit longer to do this. You can maybe see that the top sank a little bit as I was flipping it. This was super risky, and it will probably lead to warping later on. For the flower mugs, I decided that I should start sculpting them while they were still quite wet. So as soon as they could stand on their own, I very carefully tried to imprint the leaves into them to make that petal shape. Unfortunately, the leaves were quite flat and the impression was actually barely visible. So in the end, I just used the leaves to give me kind of general shape, and then I ended up drawing and shaping into the cup with a pencil and various shaping tools. It ended up pretty expressionistic and gestural, and I'm not totally sure if I like that, but that's what I did, so we'll see how it looks in the end. Everything dried pretty good. So with these slab ones, what you want is that they can hold their shape. And I was thinking about if I want to add a foot to these. I think I'm not going to for the saucers, but maybe it would be nice to add a foot to the larger plate, kind of separate it from the others a little bit. This works out nicely. The fit is actually perfect. I need to actually start the drying process today. Feeling a little overwhelmed with this project, to be honest. We are now at just under 4 hours. This guy, because of the size of it, is naturally dried out a little bit faster than the others. So I definitely want to get this one done basically first, I think. Going to make our foot now. I don't want to just lay this flat on the wedging board because it could easily lose its shape as we're pushing into it. I'm going to take the bat, use my turntable, and then I'm going to use some cloth as a little cushion. Flip it over. There we go. Cut the ends of my coil at an angle so that they overlap, and use water to attach. Do we still want to add strawberries to this? Let's just make some and we see how they look. Never made a strawberry before. What does a strawberry look like? That's a friggin' strawberry. So cute. So what if I'll just do like a couple of them and we see how it looks. If you say they look like cockroaches, that's okay. Okay, so while that chills out, we're gonna move on to trimming. So I'm just doing a very simple bottom on these boys because you know, doesn't need anything more fancy. The detail on the walls itself is just enough. I don't want to overdo it. Just gonna measure like how deep this foot is so I can match it on the other one. So it's about the depth of my pinky. A little different. Actually, it's good. Similar enough. Starting to look more similar. Ta-da! So I'm gonna put handles on these, but before I do that, I'm gonna trim my cream pot. So let's pull some handles. I'm truly overwhelmed by the quantity and difference, like the quantity of the different pieces that I have to make because, poof, like I'm having a hard time kind of keeping an overview. I don't know if that's because I'm sick or what it is. Maybe it's that COVID brain fog thing, but I'm really excited to get these mugs done because then that's like one less thing to think about. Ooh, the sun just came in. This is gonna be dramatic. I'm gonna go ahead and mention my throwing class that I have. I have an online throwing class where I teach you kind of basically everything I've been doing here. I mean, not the sculpting stuff, but the throwing, the trimming, and pulling handles. So if you're interested in learning something like that, you can go check that out. I'll have a link to it down below. So here's my little plate. And my thought, I mean, it's really cute how it is, but what if I trimmed a little insert where the cup actually goes? Wouldn't that be cool? So it's clear that it's like a saucer. I don't know, maybe it totally ruins the leaf thing, but I kind of want to try it. No. What do we think? Little cutie patooties? Wait a second. Now you have to imagine green, yellow. How I understand it is that they're doing this whole thing in a week. At least that's how Bake Off is. And in theory, the concept is really nice because that allows like normals to participate in such a thing. Like they don't have to put their whole life on hold for a few weeks, which most people can't do. So I think that that's really nice, but how on earth do they make fire and have results in such a short time, I do not understand. Like, for me, I'm trying to do this in a week, but I'm going to have to. Here's my schedule. I watched it on Sunday night, so immediately yesterday I started making, and because I don't have a drying room, fine, I gave myself one extra day to make, which is today, but that's fine because I have a whole week. Like, theoretically, that should be fine. I have to bisque these tomorrow. I would never do that. It's gonna be such a risk. My one rule for attachments is that I let them sit for 24 hours under plastic, and that's why I don't get cracks very often. I might get cracks on some of these, but I'm gonna try it just for the challenge of it, I guess. My plan is that I'm going to wrap these up like now. Like, what time is it? It's 3 o'clock right now. I'll wrap them up until this evening, and then I'll unwrap them and turn the dehumidifier on in this room, which should do its magic so that they're pretty dry by tomorrow. And then tomorrow morning, they're not gonna be dry enough for the bisque, so I'll candle them, and then I'll bisque them right after. That's my plan. Let's see if any of my pots survive. Like, I'm just curious. Like, I just wanna know how they do it. So if anyone's got the inside scoop, you know where to find me. Let me know. Let me just make a stem and it'll look even better. Okay, how does she look? I think cute. Oh, that fits so nice. A little wonky yesterday when I shouldn't have. I don't know. Cute. The last big sculptural alteration that I need to do is put some cute little tomatillo flowers on my cake stand. I should look up what they look like so I can remember. Here's the look that we're going for. See, my issue is this flower is gonna affect the functionality of the cake stand. Imagine when you're scooping the cake off, you don't wanna be running into the edges here. But I don't wanna make this any smaller. Like, this is already pretty small. So I'm wondering if I should put them down here. I really wanna see all the pieces together. I feel like that's gonna help me. Now that I'm looking at them all, I'm thinking that this guy is kind of the odd man out, this tomato, because it's so smooth and simple, and these guys are so textured and intense. So I'm thinking I need to bring this guy in by keeping this fairly simple. So I'm gonna keep this. I'm going to tie this in by adding some flowers along the bottom edge. So, well, at least it's the right size for a cake on this cake stand. Oh my God. Well, that was a mixed result kiln. I'm actually really shocked at how many things did not break. I would never fire anything like this normally. So it is interesting to kind of push the limits of what you can do, like what you can fire with. But here are my casualties. I do have cracking on both of my mug handles. Some things turned out great, like my tomato pot is perfect. And these guys are perfect. My jalapeno guy is perfect. And even this guy, I 100% expected this top to warp. It's warped a tiny bit, but it's fine. The biggest casualty, unfortunately, is my strawberry plate. The bottom completely shot off, and it must just be the fact that it wasn't dry. This I can deal with because I almost didn't put a foot on this anyway, so I'm just gonna sand this down. This is going to be an obvious flaw. We'll see how much the glaze can cover it up. Probably not much. Truly blown away that there's not more casualties here yet. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to, number one, sand down any rough points. I'm going to do what I tell you guys never to do, which is dry sand, because I cannot get these pieces wet or they're not going to absorb the glaze. This is another reason why this is an absurd challenge. This is an absurd time crunch. It's actually unsafe to do what I'm about to do, to stick to the time crunch. I'm going to take as much precaution as possible, but I definitely don't encourage you to ever dry sand. Wet sand. And if you want to learn more about wet sanding, I'll have this video up here that explains the process of wet sanding and why you should definitely do it. And then I'm going to paint. These are our AMACO underglazes. You can paint these on leather hard pottery, which is what I normally do, or you can also paint them on bisque. These underglazes work with both. They're available globally as far as I know. I have some links down in the description. I am gonna time myself again. 3 hours, honestly, 3 hours should be more than enough for this. I wasn't feeling very confident about using these underglazes, but I decided to try a sort of washy watercolor effect with them. So I diluted the glazes with water and painted them on in layers. Usually with underglazes, you want to paint on a couple of layers to achieve opacity, but I was more looking for a washy layered effect. With each layer, I also tried mixing in slightly different colors to create some depth. But I was just experimenting here, and without testing any of these colors with this technique, I really didn't know if this look was going to be successful or not. Either way, it was fun to try. So I've painted everything. We are at 37 minutes left. If you were hoping to see me run around crazy towards the end trying to finish everything up, I don't know, it just wasn't hard at all. Who knows, maybe I do another one of these towards the end of the season and the timeline gets a hell of a lot more tight. Yeah, so all I have to do left is dunk them in glaze. It's like so interesting to work with underglazes because you just like have no idea how they're going to turn out. We'll see. So this is going to be interesting because I don't actually have that much transparent glaze. And by the way, y'all always be asking me what glazes I use. This is a glaze that you can mix up yourself because it's been developed by a friend of mine. It's called Glossy Babe. She listed it on Glazy, I think. So you can search for that and then get the recipe. My glazes, I always count to 3. 1, 2, 3 underneath the glaze and then pour it out. Especially with transparent glaze, you don't want to apply it too thickly. This piece obviously needs to be fired not inside of its jar because otherwise it will fuse to the jar. So what I figured is I'll use a kiln stilt to fire it like this. So what that means is I need to not glaze this inside here. Okay, we are done. Look at that. 6 minutes to spare. I can't wait, I can't wait. This is very exciting. Everything might be completely cracked. Just gonna allow for that possibility. Okay, see you then.
Hello, Potters. Well done on a magnificent first week. We have 12 birthday tea sets. Now, we're all dying to see how they turned out, so without any further ado, could you please bring your tea set up to the judges?
Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay, I truly am lacking words right now. What I'm most surprised by is that there are no cracks. Like there's no flaws beyond what we saw in the bisque. Even the cracks on the mugs are no longer there, like the glaze has filled them. I love these mugs, I have to say. Let's start with failures slash things that I don't like. It's mostly to do with the underglaze. On my little saucers, I'm not a huge fan of how flat the underglaze turned out. When I was painting them, I was mixing different colors in. I wanted some more variation, and I think in the end, it just turned out a little flat. But when you put them together, suddenly it's not so bad, right? It's kind of cute, actually. So I'm not hating these. Jalapeno cake slicer, this is just not functional to me. My tomato jar doesn't fully close. This must have warped a little bit, but I do love how it looks. So I think for this jar, I'm just going to keep it somewhere where I don't need to access the contents very often because it's damn cute, is it not? The red is perfect. I wish I had not painted this because to me, this just doesn't make sense. When I was painting it, I was seeing it as like a grassy patch, but then I should have added some physicality to that grass, some carving or something like I did with the other ones. This is just too plain and boring. The flowers, however, are freaking adorable. So what I would do if I did this one again is I would go back to my original plan, which is putting on the edge here, and I would have thrown this rim much wider, so like this wide or so. I think these flowers are one of my favorite parts of this whole series. And then we get to my strawberries. So we already knew that the foot popped off. We already knew that there were some flaws here. I do think my strawberries are freaking adorable. Again, the leaf part is quite muddy, which I'm not a fan of, but I do have to say I love my strawberries. Yeah, this was a really fun challenge. If you want me to continue with this series, let me know, leave a comment down below because man, was it a lot of work. This completely took over my week and being a bit sick still, it was quite a lot, but honestly, it was also super fun. So thank you guys so much for watching. Bye friends.